to the magical frequency. Hopefully today this will be one of the most electrifying episodes for you. Isn't that what, isn't that The Rock? Isn't that like his intro? I hope that this episode is really fun and exciting because I feel like sometimes I get on YouTube and I get super duper bored with the content and I go down like these crazy black holes. And one of them was basically LSD adventures of folks on LSD. Those always kill me. I think the channel on YouTube, it's called Animated, I believe, and they do the best animations. If you guys see this video and you want to redo it and hook me up with an animation, hit me up. I would love to retell my story and have this animated because I'm going to take you on a very exciting ride, and I'm going to try to explain it to you the best way that I can, given what I know now relative to how I feel about existence and that we're living in a simulation, and then also relative to experiences that happened to me on this specific trip. Now, I don't promote the usage of any type of drugs or any type of mind-altering substances. If you want to get down with those things and experiment them for yourselves, that's up to you. That is a personal decision. The experience I am about to relate to you happened to me, I'm 40 now. This happened to me when I was 14 years old, and this is the first time I'm talking about it. I did previously say that I would probably private this video, and I probably will after a little bit. I'll probably release it live and then I'll put it on my members only. But I think it's important for me to release this because it's an experience that is so real for me, that stands so real to me to this day, that was an insanely fascinating experience. And it only thus further proves why I believe we are living in a simulation, especially interpreted through my adult eyes, looking back on the experience. And this was not something that my parents knew about. I didn't even understand what I was doing myself. A friend of mine convinced me to do this white tab of acid, and I had no idea what that was at the time. The internet was not the thing that it is today. I didn't grow up in an era where I knew what these things were, where I had heavy research. It was like just plain ignorance is bliss era where, yeah, you knew that it was like a psychedelic experience, but also I didn't even understand that at the time, truly. And I was approached by my friend to do this at the time, and I went ahead and did it, and it gave me a ride of a lifetime that I will never forget. And I'm going to try to animate it to you the best that I can while I talk through the story. So basically, picture just a group of kids when you're 14 hanging out, and these hoodlum looking kids, and they were nice enough, but you could tell that they were probably into smoking, drinking, like doing all these crazy things. They were older, we were younger. They were like 15 and 16, and they had these tabs. And I, looking back on it, if I knew what I knew now, I probably would have never touched it because of not knowing what could have happened given so many different scenarios that I've heard about this. That's why I'm saying I'm not advocating that you do this, because this experience for me was extremely insane and powerful and could probably blow somebody off of their rocker at that age. But for some reason, I've always had like a strong constitute in my position in reality. But these kids gave us these tabs, and we took the damn tabs. And we took the tabs, and all I remember is waking up in the middle of the street screaming. And I think this is the part where if you ever talk to people or you look at videos where people describe like ego death or any type of like crazy frightening experience during these, quote unquote experiences or these trips, I woke up petrified, basically feeling like I dipped into the black hole abyss of the universe and woke back up into the middle of the street, and I had no idea what happened in between. It was the craziest feeling I had ever had, and when I tell you that I woke up screaming, I was screaming at the top of my lungs in the middle of the street. The two other kids that we were with were probably like pros at it and understood what was happening, but the thing that was weird with me is that this acid trip for some reason was extremely intense, and it was not like anything that I really hear about. I do hear some stories, I guess, about this stuff that gets to this intensity when people are using things like DMT or high amounts of acid, but because I think I was so young and I was so thin as well, I was probably, I don't even know how thin I was when I was 14 years old. So the fact that I took a full tab of acid at that age, it just blew my mind out. Freaked out, of course, that happened. So because of the fact that I had no idea what was happening. So I think I know now, if I ever experience things like that again, like my mind is conscious of what's happening, but my 14-year-old mind was not conscious of it at the time. And these kids were walking us around the neighborhood at large, trying to convince us that it would all be okay, that they were going to take us to a park, because I was losing it, because I was starting to see the stereotypical visuals that everybody sort of talks about when they talk about hallucinating. So things start to shift, wallpaper starts to move, things start to just sway, things sound different. It's just a really bizarre experience. And this can happen when you're on what they deem magic mushrooms, things of this nature. These are the type of experiences, like rooms will feel like they're expanding and contracting. It will begin to test your perception. You are now able to perceive different things, maybe different frequencies, different capabilities within the simulation. So this was starting to happen to me, unbeknownst to me. And then I started freaking out, and then they offered me some pot to smoke. And I was unaware that this was only going to heighten how I was feeling, but they told me at the time that it would make me feel better. So I proceeded to take part in smoking all of this pot. And I don't even know at that point if I had even smoked pot before that point. So that was just even a more intensified perception of what was going on. And then they ended up taking us to a field. And anybody that knows me from this point that I've ever described this story to, and looking back on it now and understanding again what I understand now, what the perception that I do now, all I could describe it was as Nintendo World. I kept saying, it feels like I'm in Nintendo. And looking back at that, it was the simulation. It was me seeing the uncoded reality, the uncoded whatever of the simulation, of the Matrix. I was seeing like the background code of it, basically. I was not understanding why everything looked extremely pixelated. I was able to easily shift things. So if something looked a certain way, I could just shift it into something else. It was instantaneous manifestation, so to speak. I remember at one point I ended up in a field because that's where they brought us. And there was these two kids that obviously we were with. And one of them obviously took to my friend and one of them took to me. I'm sure they were trying to hit on us and all this. And at one point, the entire field then turned into the ocean. Like it literally turned into the ocean. So picture an entire like green field that you would typically sit at as a kid, like a baseball field at a public area. And it literally turned into a large ocean. And one of the kids that I was with turned into a boat. And I remember kneeling on him, rowing the boat, thinking I'm stuck now in Nintendo World. And this is going to be my life. That's one of the things that happens when you're deeply under that like sedated or like that hypnotic, or you know, just the entrance of the LSD, your brain, there's like a moment where you think that you're stuck in these things. And that's why I think often people will do things that are dangerous, because they have no idea of the perception of reality. Because if you do not have a trained mind, your brain can play tricks on you. And I was lucky at the age that I was that it didn't convince me to do something insane like that, because I have had stories ever since doing that people have done dangerous things that have gotten them killed, because they have not known how to react to these hallucinatory states in the simulation, or in the, you know, in the world, in the universe, in these streets out here. When they're partying in these streets, they can't handle the stuff, okay? And that's just what it is all day. And if your brain is untrained and you've taken a quote unquote hero dosage, you can go through psychosis, or you can get stuck in, like, I heard people talking about they took like ayahuasca, or they went on like those journeys where they smoke the DMT, but like they smoke the real stuff, the Colorado River stuff, and the frog with the stuff, and they smoke it and they see entities. And I believe that's just distorted things that you're witnessing in the simulation when you're actually smoking these different things. So what ends up happening is you have these very psychotic moments where you feel crazy, or you feel as if the world is going to end, or you feel as though you're going to die. And again, that's that whole, it could be a part of that whole ego death. That's why people go to do these things, to experience that quote unquote ego death. At that point, I was able to recognize that I was in some sort of simulated environment, which at the time I kept calling Nintendo World. And this was years before The Matrix came out, I believe, or like around the same time. And the only reason I could interpret any of it was because of the fact that I was so heavily into video games that I remembered what 2D pixelated universes looked like. And I knew what my video games in 3D looked like, and what a baseline of a video game kind of looked like, right? So everything looked like that, but I was able to easily shift it into whatever I wanted to. So like whatever I imagined. And at the time, I guess I imagined that it was like a large ocean, and this kid was a now boat, and I rode on this boat for a long time and contemplated like reality as a 14-year-old. And it was very deep. And looking back at it, I definitely am glad that I had that experience, because it shaped a lot of the things that I am now doing in my life, and the things that I've had the courage to do in my life. Because once I had that experience, there was a shield or a level of care that dropped, or a level of belief in what I thought the outer universe was. And I'm only now expressing it here for the first time in mass to the masses, because I think it's an important part of my backstory and why I do believe we're living in a simulation. I've not gotten this because I've read like Neville Goddard, or because I think that it has anything to do with any sort of manifestation guru. I'm just thinking that they were scratching the surface level of what they thought could be the understanding of what this universe is and what is going on behind the scenes. And it was just their best explanation. And a lot of them speak in esoteric, hard to understand language, or like that very outdated old English. You have to like think about it deeply. It's not in grade 8 level reading for us, okay? We need to think deeply about it. And the experience of that made me understand that there was something greater out here, that this isn't it. The fact that I was able to see the things that I saw, something is up, okay? And I also had another experience during that time where and these are other experiences where I have heard other people say these things too, which hearing them is so weird. Like hearing that other people have had these same experiences, it's like, that's so bizarre. That's another reason why, how could you not believe that it's not some sort of simulated environment where we're all having the same sort of program running underneath, that we're having these experiences that we can have, but in our own individualistic way. So I had it to where I had my hand in front of me and my entire hand melted down to, and I at that point, like, graphic artistry was not available in this way. Like, it was, but it wasn't like that. This was, I don't know, it was over 25 years ago. So this wasn't something that I had really seen in the movies to be able to articulate to my brain, to be able to show me something like this. That's the magical part in all this. That's why I love the channel's name, because it is all magical to me. It's all awesome. So essentially, I was able to watch my hand melt down to bones, melt down to absolute nothing. Like my hand melted away. Like, and I watched slowly all of the layers drip back, and I had no hand. And to see that in person as a 14-year-old child, it was insane. My mind was absolutely blown. And then another instance that night, I stood in front of a mirror, and I was able to change into whoever I wanted. And I remember changing into multiple celebrities. Like, I remember looking in the mirror and changing into, I distinctly remember changing into, for some reason, like Mariah, because she was really big at the time. And it was the phase where I was starting to get into like hip hop, a really fun time in the 90s. And I remember turning into all of these different people, and some of them I couldn't even identify. It was like a shape shifting moment where I turned into all of these people, and I could look in the mirror and see myself as this individual. It was absolutely insane. And then another part of the night, I was able to see my couches float, and they floated 110%. Like, nobody could tell me nothing, because I screamed so loud, because it happened as I was walking down my stairs. My couches in my living room were literally like 8 feet in the air. They were floating up high, and I was like, ah! And I lost my ish. And I screamed so loud that, and all the TVs were on in the house. My dad was in his back room. He came out, "What's the matter? What's happening?" Freaking out. And I'm like, oh my God, the couches were floating. But I couldn't tell him, or I could not relay or communicate to him at the time. And I just was like, no, everything's fine. I saw a bug, or I said something, and I like ran outside, because at that time it was like kids were crazy. You could just run out the front door and be like, yeah, I'm going out with my friends. F you, Dad. Like you could, it was that kind of thing back in the day, and the times were different. So it was like, and it was like a Saturday night or something. So it was like, no, we're going to the mall. It was just me. I saw something. Bye. Run out the door. He was none the wiser. So those were some of the stories from that evening. And all of those stories to me just further articulate to me that it is a simulation. The fact that I was able to look in the mirror and change my face into whatever I wanted to, that was instantaneous manifestation. If you think about it, if you look at it like that, that was imagination. What I wanted my reality to look like, it was literally put in front of my face. The part with the LSD is consciously controlling that, because when you're on it, it makes you think of things that are strange, but you can control it. It's a very bizarre feeling. It's like you're in control, but you're not. It's kind of like life. When you're on it, you can have some instance of control. And I'm assuming people that do this frequently, or that do like DMT frequently, like I know there's one individual that I used to follow him all the time and love all of his content, Leo Guru, Actualized. He was one of my first personal gurus. I have no gurus anymore. I'm my own guru, okay? And I think everybody should be their own guru. But back in the day, when my mind was still not sure about what the hell was going on and what I was seeing, and understanding that there was people on the internet now talking about it, and now there's like other people on the internet talking about it, about simulation, and they don't seem like crazy people. So it's like, you know what, I'm going to talk about it too, because I have other experiences that could articulate to somebody else and could explain to them differently, because not everything can be seen through like this law of attraction periscope or whatever you want to call it. Like, this is real life. This happened to me, and I have other stories on my channel that are going to further articulate how I have shifted things in my life, and how this has been very simulation like, to where that's the only explanation that feels good to me right now. And it doesn't erase the belief of a God. It doesn't erase the belief that maybe this isn't some sort of computer simulated. It's organic, whatever the F that means. You know what I mean? It's an organic simulation that was created so we can experience. And whatever that experience is that you want to have, it will display on the show. It will display out for you on your simulation. And it can be things that you don't want, because I've had that happen, and I'm going to talk more about those experiences too. I have had things happen in instantaneous real world, just like I did in that LSD trip. I can do that in the real world. Not as like instantaneous like in a second like that, but pretty damn close. With this specific trip, it was instantaneous manifestation. I was able to bring up what I wanted in an instant. Did it stay? No, because I was not able to physically even understand what was going on. So I couldn't even consciously control the couches floating. I was so freaked out. And that's another component. Fear. If you fear, that's when the stuff starts to disappear. When I was in the state of just like awe and understanding and being like, things stayed longer, and I was able to ride it out with less like paranoia. When I became in the state of paranoia, weird things started manifesting for me. And that's another thing. Your imagination starts to drum up, if you will, these things, these images, these manifestations. Like the fact that I was able to make my hand melt away, I was able to manifest that. I was able to manifest my hand melting and disappearing. I was able to manifest turning into 10 characters instantaneously when I looked at the mirror. I was able to manifest the couches floating. Happened in my reality when that occurred. Did anybody else see it? No. So whether or not my dad saw the couches floating, I don't know if they were. And maybe they weren't, but maybe it was because I was accessing another point or another opened portal or something into the sim where I was able to make those couches float, if you know what I mean. Okay, so it all comes back to the whole fun thing of like, there is no spoon. You are the spoon, okay? It's very much so that you are the simulation. We created the simulation. You created the simulation. And as easy as you believe that you can have, do, be something is as easy as you can have it. And it is your reoccurring thoughts. So it was my reoccurring thoughts. Lessons learned, if you will, from the trip. My reoccurring thoughts became reality. The people that I was thinking about were cropping up, okay? If I controlled it. If I did not control it, the simulation controlled it. The simulation was dictating to me what I was seeing on the screen until I had the wherewithal to say, no, this is a trip. I wasn't saying at the time this is a simulation, because I was like, this is Nintendo World, like whatever the hell that meant at the time for me, because I had no clue that there was even simulation theory that existed. So I just kept calling it Nintendo World. I can just shift the Nintendo World into whatever I want. And I was able to, in that modality, I was able to perceive those things, and nobody can tell me nothing, because I perceive those things. Those experiences happened for me. And the fact that I was able to see those just, again, articulates that if you imagine something and you believe it to be true in your mind's eye, like it's going to show on the screen of your sim. The sim's going to shift you because the sim wants to show you what's in your imagination. It's like we're projector screens because we want to experience. And if you consciously think about it like this, once you wake up, you say, okay, like this is a simulation. Okay, and if that's the case, and if I'm a projector, what does that mean? That I can project anything I want into the screen of life, within the Earth environment or whatever, where have you. I'm not saying that and did my trip defy gravity? Yes, it did. Because how did couches float? How is that explainable that couches float? And because I was able to visually see that. And if that's the case and that didn't actually happen, that further then articulates that it's a simulation, because it's just that what we're receiving from the visual cortex, from the outside stimuli, from like the eternal consciousness or whatever. So if there's like an everlasting ethos of consciousness where we all live, we plug in from that ethos into this specific simulation. There could be a ton of other Earth simulations. Like there could be an Earth with purple rivers and pink skies and unicorns. Okay, like the unicorns with the swirly doodads, and they could have lollipops for asses. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't know because we have not experienced it. And until you are able to see these things, they don't feel believable to you. And I was able to see these things in a very tangible way. I was able to see things that blew my mind, and things that I just could not even understand, comprehend, explain, nothing. Because at that age, back in the day, 25 years ago or whatever it's been now, I was not heavy into the internet. This was not a thing. I was so young and impressionable. And now looking back at everything that I have absorbed from everything around me, from other people, from literature. And I always wanted to make this joke because there's channelers out here that when I first saw them, I actually kind of like laughed because they do very interesting things. Like even Abraham Hicks, there's another channeler that makes like these he makes like all these noises, and it makes me laugh. And people could look at this and they could bust on it. They could really like make jokes on it, and they do frequently. And the thing is I could see why you want to. It is funny as hell. But at the same time, like, what's the difference between what they're doing and like what your favorite author is doing, or what your favorite guru is doing, or what your favorite whoever, or your Jesus, or your Bible, or whoever? And I'm not trying to say that to be smart mouth or put you in disbelief. I'm just saying that everybody is out here just spitting shit from their mouth that they've articulated from hearing around town, or however they feel it. I could come down here and claim that this is from my father. Hear ye, okay? Just like the next person can. And that doesn't mean, like, you need to go within yourself to know it's true. Have your own experiences. Know the truth is within you. Have your own life. Live your own life. Discover these truths for yourself. Obviously, you have to do research, but there's deep ways that you can experience this, and it doesn't have to be through using LSD. It can get you here. It just super tracked me because I didn't even barely know what meditation was and all this stuff when I was 14. I was raised Catholic, and I thought everything was fishy about the way that the Bible was interpreted. I thought it was very fear-based. I thought it was very scary. Nuns scared me. It would be like, they would be like with a ruler. It's just very frightening. And I always felt like if there was a God, that he would not be ruling like that was absurd. And the way that the Bible was interpreted was just fear. And that all this stuff about having to tell somebody your sins, like, why should I tell this man my sin when he's probably sinning all day, all night? And that's just the truth of the fact of the matter all day. And you need to be control of yourself. Whoever, just think about it. I challenge you to think about what knowledge you are getting. Where is it from? And where did they get it? Where the did they get that book? How was that book written? Because 5 people got together and did a mastermind and wrote it? Why does that make that any more valid than if 5 people today got together and wrote a mastermind and put a book out? And how come that can't be God Body next? You know what I'm saying? Like, think about it. Any channeler that you think is out of their mind is no more out of their mind than the people that probably wrote whatever thing that you're worshiping, whatever thing that you're choosing to interpret, whatever scripture you're reading, whatever it is. And I'm not trying, again, to insult anybody. I'm just asking people to really take a look, a hard deep dive at the things that you're putting into your brain and what you think is the output into the real world. Because I know through trial and error that it is, for me, it's a simulation, and the things that I think about on a constant ongoing basis that I want to show up eventually do. And of course I have to take aligned action with it, but it comes really naturally once you start to become a conscious creator, understanding that it is a simulation and that you can consciously create within your reality. Are there hiccups along the way and glitches? Absolutely. That will never disappear from anything. That is always going to be a thing. Entropy and glitches are a thing. Entropy and just the changing of life, because that's what we do. We evolve. And if you are not okay with change, you will have a difficult time in this simulation, because the simulation is always upgrading, always expanding, always going on to the next level, always wants the newest, biggest, baddest thing. So whatever it is you're trying to do, it's going to help you expand into it. Just like Elon is trying to get to the moon and all this nonsense, it's going to help him get there, because he's going to persist. He's going to say, can't nobody tell me nothing. And then he's going to start doing these things. And then eventually, I don't know if it might be him, but it could be his vision. Somebody will hold on to it and it will be done. And we will be having intergalactic planetary travel, okay? And on the rise is AI, and he's now making a robot. Next thing we will be seeing, I promise you, is I'm in love with my AI robot maid, and they're going to put them into those real silicone bodies. And we're literally going to be having like that insane type of scenario going on. I called it. Tag me in the comments when you see that video trending on YouTube. I'm marrying my AI girlfriend or whatever. I'm sure they probably already have it at this point or whatever. Like, I mean, like, they're going to want to make it legal because they're going to say that they're people, this, that, and the third, whatever you want in your sim, okay? But at the end of the day, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that this little trip down memory lane for you let you understand how I think about some of these things that I talk about now. I don't participate in these types of activities now. That we are living again in a simulation, and you are able to shift it even before sleep. You can have wonderful quote unquote imaginary acts, hallucinations. You can have your bedtime hallucinations and make them realities. Let's come up with some like new fresh jargon in the community. So it's like your new bedtime hallucination, whatever your imagination wants to hallucinate that night, keep hallucinating it. Delusional hallucination, and you will get the things because they're going to show up. And not every time, because obviously you don't want all the bad things to show up, but they do. And I will have videos on that too, where weird things show up. Not that they're bad, they're good bad. They're like, however you want to perceive them, depends on how you want to look at it. And I will be talking about some of those types of scenarios very soon, so you can dwell upon them for yourselves. So I hope I know everybody enjoyed this video, because it was fun as hell. These type of videos are pretty rare, and I love listening to them. So until the next time, guys, I hope you subscribed if you did enjoy. I know you will all continue to manifest magic and resonate on your highest frequency. Bye, guys.